So there's a new ROG Ally, and this is the Ally X, and it's improved in a number of ways. Probably most importantly in the battery department. This thing has double, well, at least the battery is twice the size, 40 watt hours to 80 watt hours. And that's a big deal for portable gaming. So it's also got more storage, more RAM. They've modified the D-pad. They've changed a bunch of things on here. 7-inch display, AMD Z1 Extreme, Wi-Fi 6E is built in. So it was previously white, and this one is apparently black. Oh, right. Stand. Little secret stand hiding in there. So here is the Ally X. Now it does feel a little bit beefier. That's not necessarily a bad thing. So one thing I've noticed with these devices in the past is, depending on the size of your hands, you may get some cramping when compared to console controllers, for example. Obviously, there's a varying degree of that depending on your hand shape and the grips, but they have made the grips more substantial here. And I presume, like, when you're adding more battery life, when you're sticking an 80 watt hour battery in here, there's a big consideration into ergonomics and comfort, because now you can play for a very long time. So over here we've got 2 Type-C ports, a couple of LEDs, volume up and down, which is elevated. We have micro SD expansion, an analog audio jack, and of course our power switch. This also gives you your first look at our shoulder buttons, which are textured, and our triggers, which are quite broad. It's a really big target there for you to hit. You've also got these buttons on the back, so you can keep your thumbs where they should be on your thumbsticks and map these for a variety of functions in game. On the front of the device, we have our typical X, A, Y, B buttons, and then our joysticks. Now these thumbsticks feel smooth, sort of like a medium elevation, textured around the outside, and of course a slight concave. So they tweaked the location of these joysticks relative to the D-pad and face buttons, which makes it easier for each hand to move between them. So apparently they worked really hard to make the chassis itself as light as possible in order to compensate for that change with the 80 watt hour battery. Now, of course, we have a few more menu and nav buttons on the front. 1, 2, 3, 4. What do you think about the decision to go with black instead of white? Which color do you prefer? The Ally X now in black. Also in the package, you're gonna get your power brick. This guy is 65 watts. And of course, a little bit of paperwork. It's kind of cool they give you some way to prop it up right out of the box. So yeah, the hand grips are actually more substantial in scale in order to give you something more substantial to grab onto. So even though the battery is up to 80 watt hours from 40, the actual weight of the device is only up 11%. So let me go ahead and get this charged up and get some games installed, and let's see what it can do. Very sensual voice, Will. Wouldn't you agree? Or is that just the type of character you like? Will's got me testing out this new game. Is it new? Did it just come out? I'm on the early access right now. Hades 2. I'm just running around mashing buttons, and you know what? It's such a cozy place. Display is nice to look at. I mean, it's tough. This is a well-lit environment, so it's tough. We have full brightness here. We are off of the cable as well, and the fan is going. I've been playing for, I don't know, 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes, but it's very subtle. Like the audio of the game itself, like you can't even hear the fan with the volume up. And the speakers are just in a great location, right? They're just sort of facing right at you. So they're drowning out any kind of fan noise out the back. Now, there are different modes. Obviously, this is in performance mode. You can see 17 watt. I can plug it in and go to turbo mode. Will was also talking about the versatility of these devices where it's a computer, right? Like you could plug this into an external setup and still use your peripherals if you wanted to, But obviously the exciting part here is the ability to go off of the wall and just sit back on your couch and play a popular title like this in a much more comfortable setting. So the control mode is set to auto. There are different game modes that you can select from as well. All of this stuff is configurable depending on what you choose to be playing. You can limit the number of frames per second in order to prioritize battery life. Oh, that's right. And of course, these are customizable at the back as well. So whatever is useful to map those for, depending on the title that you happen to be playing. So you can control via that window that slides out and access Armory Crate via this button, or you can do so just from the OS. You can see your different titles here: performance settings, CPU stats, GPU stats. We can see these settings for all the different modes. So obviously we may not need as much performance for Windows. We have a silent setting, performance setting, turbo setting. So here you can see how you select your control mode. You have gamepad mode, ideal for most games with built-in gamepad support, and a first or third person camera. And then you have desktop mode, ideal for obviously being inside of the desktop, web browsing, and any other applications. I can also change the response curve on the left stick, right stick. This is really cool. I can change the trigger depth and I can mirror that to my other trigger, or I can leave the right and left different. So you can really go in here and tweak this thing in a way that you might not be able to do with a typical video game console. Everything's organized inside the Armory Crate. So I have my games here, including what's running, and I can use my trigger to cycle through the menu, or I can just use touch, and you can see the variety of different options for gaming on a platform like this. So the versatility here is enormous and beyond the other dedicated handhelds, which are obviously locked into one particular platform. Now, different options for lighting and the brightness of the lighting, which I'm just gonna crank up right now. It's currently in Aura Sync mode. You can change to static and pick a different color, breathing mode, strobing, color cycle, rainbow. Now, we were just talking previously about how some titles translate really well to the handheld and others maybe not so much. So this is something that you're going to have to intuitively recognize. But because you have the ability to integrate with other peripherals, you can also use this connected to those peripherals and an external monitor and have a completely different interface experience if you choose to. And I think when it comes to the new model here, adding that bigger battery while only increasing the scale of the device 11%, I think that's a trade-off that most people are gonna wanna make, with battery life being such a huge component in your enjoyment of what is a portable platform. So if you're wondering about keyboard input, you obviously have a touch-based keyboard, which will pop up when you're in a browser or doing any kind of productivity task. But I do wanna know what your favorite thing about it was, and she said, listening to the Trolls soundtrack. Anyway, over here is where you're gonna control and configure your comfort for your seat here. You have seat heating. This is my thigh. Okay, it's kind of a longer, it's a longer thigh. You can watch video, do laptop type stuff. It's really fun versatility to have on a handheld game console like this. Now, this product is a refinement on a previous version with some upgrades. Let's go ahead and pop the back plate off. Can I take this with me on my trip, Will, or what? Hey, a little time by myself? Will, what do you say? It's like the old days? A little gaming on the couch? Look at the size of the battery in there now. It's the length of the entire unit. Joysticks, cooling along the top, very simplified. And obviously, you can also see the upgradable SSD now, one screw. This really helps you appreciate, though, all the consideration that's necessary in designing something like this, like packing that much into such a small form factor, and recognizing how big of a component and consideration the battery is. You almost have to design completely around it. I'm pretty happy with this trend. There was talk for so long from tech enthusiasts about, listen, we don't need everything to be the thinnest in the world if it means we have to compromise battery life on everything. Like, let's get a slightly bigger battery, even if it means something gets a tiny bit larger. And in this case, they were able to give you an 80 watt hour instead of a 40 watt hour and barely increase the scale or weight, and arguably maybe even improve the ergonomics in doing so. So this is a trend that I can definitely get behind, and I think it's a trade-off that almost everybody would make. And you're still having the beautiful display and the nice sound, and you're getting improvements in the thumbsticks and a variety of other areas. So it's not a completely new product, but it is a refinement, and it's a refinement in areas that I think most people are going to appreciate.